Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay connected to all future programs.
I appreciate all of you joining on to learn more about a very hot topic on supplements. This is something we get asked about a lot. So what are we going to discuss today? We are going to go over what supplements are and how they're regulated because there's a lot of confusion around this. So I want to try to break it down in a simple and practical way. We're going to talk about who is going to benefit from supplements or who may benefit from supplements because not everyone needs them, and I'm going to argue that most people probably don't. We're going to talk about when supplements may be appropriate, especially during cancer treatment and in survivorship phase. We're going to review some of the most commonly used or questions that we get asked about regarding supplements as dietitians, including things like protein supplements, vitamins, probiotics, minerals, things of that nature. And then finally, I would be remiss as a dietitian if I did not emphasize a food first approach to nutrition, meaning that supplements are helpful tools and we want to use them when appropriate, but they're meant to support your nutrition, not to be your nutrition. And I also don't want to forget to mention that the American Institute of Cancer Research actually recommends against using supplements for cancer prevention. And there's many reasons behind this. One reason can be because at higher dosages, it can even be harmful. For example, if you take too much beta carotene, for smokers, it could potentially cause lung cancer. Also, whole foods provide a synergistic effect with nutrients and phytochemicals that supplements can't replicate. So again, as I mentioned, supplements are products used to support or add to your nutrition when food alone may not be enough. You may have already spoken to your dietitian or your oncologist about some of these, but oral nutrition supplements, a lot of times when patients are on treatment, that causes a range of side effects that may cause a suboptimal appetite. And so we may recommend something like Kate Farms or Ensure Complete, Boost Plus, things like that. Protein supplements, which come in the forms of powders and bars, vitamins and minerals like vitamin D, iron, calcium, just to name a few. There's many more than that. And then common supplements. So herbal products, omega-3s, probiotics, and supplements come in many forms. You find them in pills, capsules, powders, liquids, bars, gummies, everything under the sun. And again, it's not meant to replace meals or cure diseases. So we're going to start with vitamins and minerals and common supplements. And I want to tell you about one of my patients who I had a few years ago who came in with a bag of, I kid you not, 40 supplements. And she said, "Do I need all these?" And I said, "I haven't even looked at them yet, but I can go ahead and tell you no." And she said, "Do I need some of them?" So I said, "Okay, let me just look through them and kind of see what's going on." So I reviewed her lab work. None of her labs were low because a lot of times we will recommend supplementation for vitamins and minerals with low labs. I'm like, no. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to be your new best friend today and save you a whole lot of money each month because you don't need any of these." And so I became her favorite dietitian immediately. And I will tell you that that story is not uncommon, that we do have patients asking lots of questions about supplements and then us getting to tell them, that's probably not necessary and in some cases can even be harmful. So again, common supplements are vitamins, minerals, herbs, and other botanicals, also amino acids, and then just another reminder to not use while on cancer treatment without consulting your dietitian or your oncologist. And this is one reason, there's many more, but under the DSHEA, which is a Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, um, the FDA has no authority to approve dietary supplements before they're marketed. So it's not like medications that have been, thoroughly tested, approved by the FDA. And so that means that what is said to be in that particular supplement may not actually be in it. The quantity, the quality, and the ingredients can vary between brands and even between bottles. And so just because it says that it contains X amount of this nutrient on the label, it may actually not. And so if you are going to choose to be on a supplement, look for trusted third-party testing. And you'll see on the right-hand side of the slide, there's two organizations, the NSF and the USP labels, which are on a lot of supplements, and that just means they've been third-party tested. And so that means that what they say is in that particular supplement actually is, and it also has to do with safety and that the safety, it's safer. And FDA, with that said, even though they can't approve certain supplements, they can take action after products are on the market if they are unsafe or misleading in any way. So, who actually needs supplements? So, first, again, it's individuals with suboptimal intake. So, if you need, say, 2,000 calories a day, 80 grams of protein, a certain amount of vitamins and minerals, and for whatever reason, you're not able to get that in, so if you have a poor appetite and there's an array of treatment side effects, your nausea, vomiting, early satiety, or getting full fast, things like that, you may not be able to get your needs in a given day. Also, patients with increased nutrient needs, so patients that are, with cancer, patients that have had surgery that may need more protein in certain supplementation for healing. They may need supplements. Patients with absorption issues, so think GI surgery, Crohn's, colitis. Older adults sometimes have higher needs. For example, adults over the age of 50 may need 1,200 milligrams of calcium as opposed to 1,000. That's just one example. And then one of the biggest reasons, and sometimes the only reasons that we supplement for patients on cancer treatment is deficiencies. Okay, so we'll see patients with low vitamin D, magnesium, B12, potassium, and things like that. And in that case, it is absolutely reasonable and beneficial to supplement. And then also certain life stages like pregnancy, just to throw that on there. This may not be the group to mention that, but I did want to say that that is a reason why a patient may need more. So the first one I want to go over is the most standard, the multivitamin or multimineral supplements. These are probably the most commonly used, and they can be helpful in certain situations. Now, I have had patients on cancer treatment who are just really, really want to be on a vitamin or a mineral. You're not going to talk them out of it. And so in that case, I honestly don't have that much of a problem with it, but you really just want to choose a vitamin or in a mineral, multivitamin, multimineral that's about 100% daily value for most nutrients. So you don't want to have mega doses of any nutrient, particularly while on treatment. And at this point, I'm just going to mention that a lot of times during the winter, we'll have patients who want to take emergency or mega doses of vitamin C and things like that. But we don't want patients to take any mega doses of antioxidants. So that's your vitamin C, your vitamin E, selenium, things like that while on treatment. Okay. You absolutely can and should have food sources of vitamin C and vitamin E, but just no megadose supplements. Okay. So again, patients who are not eating a balanced diet or have higher nutrient needs, malnourished individuals, elderly, malabsorption, the things that I'd already mentioned. There are vitamins and minerals designed for your age, gender, life stage. And again, you just don't want that to exceed the daily value. Recognize and realize that not all multivitamin supplements are the same. Some do not contain iron. Some contain iron and calcium, which can compete for absorption. Okay, and I'll go over that a little bit more later on. And then some contain different forms of the specific vitamin or mineral that may not be quite as readily absorbed as others. Vitamin D, this is a big deficiency that we see in a lot of patients, and it does play many different roles in your body. It helps to absorb the calcium and phosphorus, which is essential for maintaining healthy bones and teeth. It also supports muscle function and the nervous system, which is especially important for strength. It plays a role in cell communication and helps keep minerals balanced in the body. And it also supports the immune system, which may help in reducing inflammation, which is huge in the oncology population. So we can get vitamin D from some food sources, but not a whole lot. And even the food sources that it is in, a lot of patients don't like. Beef liver has some, cod liver, salmon and tuna, milk, eggs, but there are some fortified products like orange juices, yogurts, and cereals that have vitamin D added, but not a whole lot. But there are some. So with that said, we'll move on to vitamin D supplements. Generally speaking, you're going to see two, and that's going to be vitamin D2 and D3. D3 is the active form of vitamin D, and it's preferred over vitamin D2. Those at vitamin D deficiency risk are those maybe during the winter with limited sunlight exposure, or somebody that's maybe not feeling really well and not going out of the house a lot. Darker skin tones, that's a big one too, of patients that may be deficient. Older adults, those with kidney disease, and then poor absorption with, or vegan diet, fat malabsorption, GI surgery, or resections can be at risk for deficiency. Healthy individuals need about 400 to 800 IUs, and then the micrograms are listed here as well. If you're deficient, please talk to your healthcare provider about the appropriate amount to replete your levels. A lot of times providers will either prescribe like 50,000 IUs a week or 1,000, did I say that right? 1,000 a day. Is that right? Um, and with that said, getting adequate sunlight, but not too much sunlight, is good. So about 10 minutes a day of sun is a good thing to do, but make sure that you talk with your oncologist because, as we know, too much sunlight can also cause skin cancer. But we do want to get enough to make sure that we have adequate vitamin D. B12 is another one that we get asked a lot about, and a lot of times patients will have deficiencies. It helps to make red blood cells, which carry oxygen throughout your body. So when levels are low, sometimes the patients can feel fatigued or weak. It's important for nerve function, brain health, and that's why low B12 can sometimes cause numbness, tingling, or even memory changes. It's essential for making DNA and important for overall health. So food sources, we find this primarily in animal-based foods, as you'll see on the right side of the slide. So good B12 sources are things like meat, fish, eggs, dairy products, and things like turkey and cheese, maybe even in nutritional yeast or fortified foods. So supplements can be found in various forms. There's B12 and multivitamins, B complex vitamins, or even just as a single dose supplement. And also in various forms, including oral capsules, sublingual forms that dissolve under the tongue, and then in some cases, a doctor may prescribe an injection, particularly if absorption is an issue that can happen. So patients for risk includes people with pernicious anemia where the body can't properly absorb B12, and also patients on certain medications, particularly what we call PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, which can be acid-reduced medications that are on those long term can be at risk for vitamin B12 deficiency, and also metformin for diabetes can be at risk for B12 deficiency. Patients with vegan or vegetarian diets, that's pretty common sense if the food sources are primarily animal food products, and then GI or absorption issues. So down at the bottom, it does talk about the dosage. Most adults about 2.4 mics per day. If you're deficient, higher doses may be needed, but it's often 500 to 1,000 micrograms or as directed by your physician. On to iron. This is another one that a lot of patients can be deficient in, particularly with cancer and related treatment. Its function is to help carry oxygen throughout the body through a protein called hemoglobin. So iron is important to give you energy to support those energy levels. So a lot of times when patients are deficient in iron, they will be fatigued, just lack that energy. It plays a role in brain function, overall cell health, also helps to make some hormones. And there are two different types of food sources that I wanted to go over. Your heme iron, those are going to be better absorbed. That's going to be your animal products like beef, chicken, pork, fish, eggs, beef liver. So you can just eat those as is, and those will be, pretty well absorbed. But there's also a group of iron-containing foods called non-heme, and those are going to be your plant sources. Those are foods like nuts, soy, beans, spinach, chocolate, fortified cereals. Now, take note that with the non-heme iron, they are absorbed somewhat, but they actually absorb much better if you consume a source of vitamin C. So, for example, if you have a glass of orange juice with your nuts or strawberries with your spinach, things like that. That's going to be very helpful, and the vitamin C is going to help that iron to absorb much better. And that goes for all of the non-heme iron foods. So iron supplements, like I mentioned before, they are available in some of the multivitamin, multimineral supplementation, but a lot of times, sometimes they're not, and then a lot of times they are just taken on their own. The most common types you'll see are ferrous sulfate and ferrous gluconate. The ferrous forms are better absorbed. Some types may be easier on the stomach, which can make a difference for tolerance. And I will say that patients who take a lot of iron tend to struggle with some constipation. Excuse me, my phone's ringing. So who is at risk for iron deficiency? These are patients that may have had blood loss or have cancer and undergoing chemotherapy. And again, those GI disorders or having surgery can be a risk for iron deficiency. The RDA for iron, or the amount of iron we should have in a day, is about 8 milligrams for males and individuals over 50. And it's a little bit higher for females age 19 to 50 or premenopausal females. And if you're deficient, high doses can be recommended. And again, you're always going to want to talk to your physician about what that dose should be. Calcium is very important too. A lot of cancer treatments can cause issues with bone integrity or bone structure. And so we do want to make sure we're getting in a good amount of calcium. Its function is to build and maintain strong bones and teeth. And in fact, 98% of the calcium in your body is stored in your bones and your teeth. It does more than that, though. It does support muscle function and movement, as well as nerve signaling and heart function. And I know many of you probably know where we get calcium from. We get it from our dairy foods like milk, yogurt, and cheese. But there are other non-dairy options. These include fortified foods, and so that just means foods that don't have calcium in it naturally, but added to it. And can be products like orange juice, soy milk, cereals, tofu, and then kale, broccoli, chia seeds, and sardines do have some calcium as well. So supplementation, this is another one of those that can be available in the multivitamin or multimineral supplementation. It's usually not in nearly amount as it is if taken on its own. There are a couple different types of calcium supplementation. One is calcium carbonate, and that's Tums is an example of calcium carbonate. And with Tums, you always have to take it with food for absorption. Okay. The other common type of calcium supplementation is calcium citrate, and that is unique in that you can take it with or without food, and the absorption rate is about the same. So, those at risk for calcium deficiency, if you're deficient in vitamin D, there's a good chance you are not getting enough calcium in because remember the role of vitamin D to help with calcium absorption. Um, Patients that are not getting enough from food alone, maybe they avoid dairy, vegan, vegetarian, that kind of thing. Individuals with osteopenia or osteoporosis. And again, during and after cancer treatment, we deal with this a lot with our survivorship population. Patients who are on certain types of treatment like cisplatin or biphosphonates, or even again those proton pump inhibitors, we see are a lot of times are at risk for a little bone integrity concerns and need more calcium as well. So most adults need about 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams a day between food and supplements. Um, Most calcium supplements are around 500 milligrams, and if deficient, we may have our patients take up to 1,500 a day. And something I didn't mention or didn't mention in enough detail is calcium and iron compete for absorption. And so it is important to take them 2 hours apart. Okay, so if you're on a multivitamin with one or the other, with either calcium or iron, and then you take either calcium or iron on its own, you want to make sure that you take them 2 hours apart. On to magnesium. What does it do? It's involved in hundreds of processes in the body and plays a key role in muscle and nerve function. It also helps with energy production and supports heart rhythm and blood pressure. And magnesium is another mineral that also helps maintain bone health. So, magnesium is found in a variety of foods, and some of the best sources are going to be your nuts and seeds, along with beans and soy products. And it's also found in foods like spinach, potatoes, bananas, as well as milk, meats, and even fortified cereals or oatmeal. Even though magnesium is found in many foods, intake can still be low in some people, especially if diet variety is limited, or once again, if there's absorption issues of any kind. So this is actually something I do get a lot of questions about, particularly with other seminars regarding magnesium, which type to take. There are lots of them out there, and there's lots of forms. So as it says here on this slide, magnesium is available in multivitamins, capsules, powders, and topical forms even. And there are many types that some are better for certain conditions and indications for others. Magnesium citrate, this version of magnesium is typically pretty well absorbed. And so if a patient is deficient, this might be the way to go. Magnesium oxide can help with heartburn, indigestion, constipation. Magnesium glycinate, a lot of times, this is gentler on the stomach and it's marketed for stress and sleep. Magnesium chloride, you'll see that a lot in the topical lotions and creams. It can soothe sore muscles. Magnesium taurate can help with blood sugar and blood pressure levels. And magnesium sulfate, that's going to be like your Epsom salts, which can help with muscle relief and relaxation, very well absorbed through the skin. So those at magnesium deficiency risk, high fluid output is a big one. So patients who have a lot of diarrhea, vomiting, ostomy output, and wounds are at risk. And then just want to make another note here that patients a lot of times with who are taking magnesium supplements, it actually it can exacerbate diarrhea. And so if you're having diarrhea, can't figure out the cause, and you happen to be taking magnesium, that is something to discuss with your oncologist or your dietitian. Any GI disease, GI surgery, patients with diabetes can actually be potentially deficient in magnesium. Also, patients with alcoholism or taking diuretics and those proton pump inhibitors, there they are again. The dosage is about 420 milligrams a day for males, about 300 a day for females, and the upper limit for supplementation is about 300 milligrams a day. So I just made a couple slides here for miscellaneous supplements that I get asked about. Um, there's a few on this slide, and I made another one with the others that I get asked about a lot. So patients, particularly when they're having a lot of diarrhea and GI distress, is how we call it, they'll ask about should I be taking a probiotic? This can be helpful for gut health, particularly if you've recently been on antibiotics, if you had a recent GI infection, deal with conditions like IBS. But I will tell my patients to try probiotic-rich foods first. And that's foods like yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, kombucha, to see if that might help somewhat. And if that doesn't help, we can always consider a probiotic. But these supplements are not recommended if immunocompromised or on active treatment. So that's something after treatment, that's more of a conversation that we had. There are some cases where we may recommend a probiotic, but it's generally across the board, it's not necessarily recommended. Collagen's another one we get asked about a lot. It's commonly marketed, as I'm sure a lot of you ladies have heard, for hair, skin, nails, things like that, but also for joints and connective tissue support. Some people have tried to take it to bump up their protein needs, or to support healing or, protein intake, but it's not a complete protein. So it's not going to be like your whey protein powder supplementation, and it lacks some amino acids. And so that's if you talk to your dietitian and we say, you may need some protein powder, we're never going to recommend collagen to help you beef up your protein intake. And then also, if you have kidney disease, just make sure to talk with your dietitian or your doctor before taking these. And then another one is your omega-3s. They are extremely anti-inflammatory, healthy fats, helpful in improving heart health. There are food sources such as salmon, tuna, sardines, so your fatty fishes, herring, but also seeds like chia seeds and flaxseed have omega-3s. The only time I would caution you about omega-3 supplementation is if you're on a blood thinner or if you have a low platelet count or if you have surgery coming up. You may want to talk to your provider, if you are taking them, to stop them temporarily or to not start until after that's done. And then this is another one. Patients like to take capsules of turmeric. These are anti-inflammatory as well, marketed for inflammation and joint pain. Very popular in integrative cancer care. Again, there's another caution here. It can potentially interact with blood thinners and some chemotherapy, and high doses can even upset your stomach a little bit. So, going back to megadoses of anything, there's megadoses of turmeric in pill form, of garlic, of mushrooms, and I'm like, just eat the mushroom. Just sprinkle the turmeric in your soup. You don't need these things in capsule form. So, doing things like a turmeric latte or just asking your dietitian, how can I sprinkle more turmeric on my food? This will also save you some money as well. So, they're great in your eggs, again, soups, lattes. So there's plenty of ways to sprinkle turmeric and get those anti-inflammatory benefits without taking more pills because we want to decrease our pill burden as it is. And for best absorption, you want to add black pepper and eat with a fat source. All right, so put some pepper on those eggs and those soups. And maybe have some cheese on those eggs too for that fat source to help you absorb the turmeric. Here's another one last slide on the miscellaneous supplements I get asked about. Glutamine is one, so we do recommend this one a good bit for things like mucositis, and then sometimes for GI toxicity, diarrhea, and even for peripheral neuropathy. Some patients do find symptom relief, particularly with mouth sores, and then also again with those GI issues sometimes. The evidence itself is mixed, and it's not universally recommended to every single patient, but you may have had a dietitian recommend something like Helios, particularly if you're at risk for mouth sores or if you have mouth sores. Creatine. This is a hot topic right now. It's often marketed to support muscle strength, exercise performance, lean body mass, and it's even now marketed as supportive for cognitive benefits as well. And short term, it is generally considered safe, but evidence in patients with cancer is still evolving, so I can't tell you take creatine or don't, especially for outcomes like strength, function, and body composition. We're on the cusp of those types of things. If you are a patient that doesn't drink a lot of water as it is, or are at risk for dehydration, I definitely wouldn't recommend creatine to you because it does put you at risk for dehydration. All right, so we're going to move along to oral nutrition supplements. Um, and before I do that, I did want to touch on what is protein. Just a quick reminder, if you've been to any of my talks before, I know you've heard me talk about protein, or if you've met with a dietitian or probably an oncologist, you've probably heard more about protein than you ever want to hear again. But it is essential for a range of life-sustaining functions. And the primary goal while you're on treatment is to maintain that good, solid muscle mass. And a lot of times, patient survivorship are trying to rebuild that. And so that's why we hammer down on protein so much. But it does also build repair cells. It helps oxygenate our red blood cells, regulate hormones, aids in digestion. So there are other reasons, but the main one we talk about is maintaining that good, healthy muscle mass. If you are tracking your protein, look on the right, the nutrition facts label, that's where you'll find it, and that is per serving. And the DRI is around the dietary reference intake is around 10 to 35% of calories a day. A lot of times you'll hear your dietitian say, try to have about 20 grams of protein per meal, maybe even 30, and then 10 to 20 with snacks in between because you may have higher protein goals. And that can vary person to person, just depend on what you have going on. So when patients are not able to get in as much protein as they are needed, we do recommend either maybe some beverage ideas or what you'll hear us call oral nutrition supplements. So drink ideas, milk, if patients are having trouble getting in enough calories, perhaps even whole milk, and that's something we typically only recommend on treatment. In survivorship, we recommend low-fat dairy. Also, homemade smoothie. There's a way to, adding avocado, peanut butter, um, even protein powder to a smoothie can make and made with milk can bump up your protein and calories that way. And oral nutrition supplement ideas. So there's Ensure again, I mentioned earlier, there's Boost Plus, Kate Farms, there's Orgain if you want an organic type. And then there's like Glucerna for patients with diabetes or Nepro for patients on dialysis. There's something for everybody. And there's also store brands such as Equate. And so patients that can't afford Ensure or Ensure Plus, we recommend that they go to Walmart and grab Equate Plus because it's just the Walmart brand. So again, I'm going to break these down into supplements or oral nutrition supplements that we recommend for weight gain and then also some for weight management or weight loss. Ensure Plus, Ensure Complete, Boost Plus. There's also a product called Boost Very High Calorie that has 530 calories, which is a lot. I'll just say that per serving. And then that store brand that I mentioned, Equate Plus. So the products that have a plus or a complete, those are going to be your higher calorie and higher protein options. So if you're wanting to gain weight, have these in between your meals during treatment, these are good ones to select. But again, always talk to your dietitian, who can recommend the best product for you. And then patients in survivorship who are trying to either maintain their weight or potentially lose weight. And we may recommend something that's a little bit lower in calorie, but still has good amount of protein. So some options that are listed here, Ensure Max, Premier Protein, Glucerna Protein Smart, there's Boost Max Protein. And these have around 160, 100 and 150, 160-ish calories. And they have about 20 to 30 grams of protein per carton. So that's a pretty good amount there. So patients that are trying to eat more plant-based or even our vegan and vegetarian patients may do things like Kate Farms. Orgain has a plant-based option. Ensure has a plant-based. And then also plant-based protein powder made with various types of plant-based protein. So that's going to be usually pea protein is a big one, and options like Garden of Life or Orgain. So protein powder, concentrated protein from sources like whey, soy, pea, rice protein. Those are, a lot of times patients will ask about those. Um, whey is a good one. It's very readily absorbed. It's a complete protein, and so that's the typically our go-to. We do say to avoid soy protein powder, those soy isolates, and that's during treatment, because while soy foods, so that's your tofu, your tempeh, edamame, things like that, those are fine. All right. So research is showing not only are they, healthy to have 1 to 2 servings a day, but maybe even beneficial. But with that said, again, we want to try to avoid the soy protein powder during treatment. You can mix it into drinks, to smoothies, foods. So I'll have patients that'll mix it into their soups or even mashed potatoes. There's savory options, there's sweet options, there's unflavored. I know a brand called Undri has a good unflavored option that you can mix into mashed potatoes or soups or things like that. There's also all types of flavors. So if you're a chocolate person or vanilla or strawberry, there's something for everybody. So these are helpful for patients who may have had experienced some muscle loss, poor appetite, higher protein needs. So patients who have had surgery, healing, on treatment, any type of recovery will generally need more protein and may not be able to get it from diet alone. So when you're choosing a protein powder, you want to look for around 20 to 30 grams of protein per serving. Watch for added sugars because some of them do have a little bit more added sugars. And then choose based on tolerance. Some patients are able to better tolerate the whey, and then some actually tolerate the plant-based a lot better. So protein bars, these are convenient and portable. They're useful for on-the-go nutrition. And so I like these, and I'll go back to that. My husband had cancer in the fall, and I made him a little snack bowl, and I think that protein bars are a really good thing to put in the snack bowl. And he happened to really like them and ate them all, so I had to refill it several times. But I like them for on-the-go nutrition. And so, as you know, you have treatment, doctor's appointments, your oncologists, your nephrologist. So, for patients that are on the go, always packing a snack bag, and you can throw your, protein bars in here. So this is good not as a meal replacement, but in between meals to supplement your nutrition. And it can be helpful during fatigue or low appetite because a lot of them have a lot of bang for your buck. And so they'll have a lot of calories and protein in a small quantity of food. So they can be good. Look for about 15 to 20 grams per bar, lower added sugar if possible, and then fiber content. It can either help you or it can cause major GI upset. One brand I really like are the RX bars for snack. I think they have like 12 grams of protein, but they have a ton of fiber. So if you're trying to not eat as much fiber due to some GI issues going on, that's probably not one you would want to choose. So just be mindful looking at that nutrition facts label when you're looking at the protein to also check out the fiber. Because right now, fiber and protein are hot items, and people are trying to put protein and fiber in everything. And so just watch for that to make sure that you don't upset your tummy. And if you do decide to increase your fiber, make sure that you are increasing that water, or you could have an upset stomach. Okay. Again, if you have been at any of my talks, you've probably heard this a million times, but it is possible and probable that most people can get adequate nutrition through food and food alone. We want to try to consume about 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. You may even need to start with breakfast to get those fruits and veggies in. So you may need to cut up some vegetables to throw in your eggs and have some fruit on the side. We want to vary the colors of fruits and vegetables to make sure we're getting our vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, phytonutrients, because they all have different roles in the body. So do not eat carrots and broccoli every single night. A, you're going to get really bored, and B, you're not getting the nutrients provided in your red veggies, your purples, all the other colors. Again, we want to prioritize protein, so including a lean protein source with every meal. Get in those good omega-3s, so including salmon and tuna at least twice a week is recommended. You can do meatless meals if you're into meatless Mondays. You can make a pot of lentils, or vegetarian chili, things like that. Avoiding processed meats with and limit consumption of red meat, so about 8 to 12 ounces of red meat or less per week. Eating a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and legumes if you can tolerate fiber, because we do want to consume high fiber foods, but only if your GI tract allows for it at this point in your journey. Limiting consumption of those fast or ultra processed foods, so foods with a lot of added fats, starches, and sugars. Limit or avoid consumption of sugar sweetened drinks and really avoid alcohol consumption because it is linked to so many different types of cancers initially and cancer recurrence. So this is just a good way to be able to envision what your plate should look like. And this is actually from the American Institute of Cancer Research, and it's called the New American Plate. So you want to make sure that 2/3 of your plate is filled with plants. All right. So that again is your fruits, your vegetables. We want to have a variety. So maybe two different types of vegetables, as well as a tasty serving of whole grains, so your quinoa, wild rice, things like that. And then about a deck of card size of, or 3 ounces of meat. So that's your fish, your poultry, your sometimes red meat, it can be. So that's about the size of the palm of your hand. And that provides somewhere between 20 and 25 grams of protein. And of course, your fish, that would qualify there too.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.